What got me into lobstering was I used to hang out at the pier when I was a kid, every day, all day long, striped bass fishing. And I'd watch these boats come in and out, the Mahonis, the Marcellas, Moschino. And growing up in Hull, my dad was friends with all of them, going to high school. And one day I remember Peter walked up to me and said, "Why don't you get on a boat one day?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So the first boat I actually went lobstering on was with Augie on the old Windermere, the Spindrift. And then, I'd fill in for Peter and Bobby and those guys, and then it kind of just grabbed me, and I just took it and ran. Never stopped since. The Dire Wolf was originally built to be a long lining boat for a guy out of New Jersey. And I bought it and turned it into a lobster boat. It is a good boat. I do like it. I wish I had a bigger engine to go a little bit faster when you want to go home. But it's the way I configured the lobster tanks and moved the fuel tanks, I think it's a little bit more seaworthy than it was before, because I put a lot of the weight below the water line. So when it's windy and nasty out, the boat kind of squats a little bit more, and it's a lot more comfortable than what it was before I did all the work. Everybody thinks it's all glory, but when it gets cold and it's windy and it's rough out, a lot of people don't look at it, they don't think of it as that. They see it on the nice summer days when they're out on the beach and they see all the boats lined up down the beach, but there's a lot more to it than just that. What I've noticed the most about the change in the industry in Hull is there's not a lot of young guys getting into it. There's a lot of old, it's a lot of old timers now, and there's not too many young kids getting into it. And I feel with that, it's just because the cost of everything. Trying to get into the business now, the cost of the permits, the cost of traps, the cost of a boat. I mean, if you want to get somewhere halfway decent, you're looking at $80,000 right off the bat right there. That's a big nut to crack now. When I was a kid growing up, like we talked about earlier with the pier down there, I mean, that's come a long way from what I remember. They had Jersey barriers in the front of it because they didn't want anybody going down there. The pier was ready to fall down. But we got a pretty good group of guys down the dock that fixed it back in, 2012. We all ripped the timbers up and fixed all that and cleaned up the area and put a new cooler in and made it a little bit more presentable than what it was. The best day I've ever had, like poundage-wise, there was many days when my guy Kyle was working with me. He was a good guy to work with. We had fun. Caught a lot of lobsters in the month of October. We had really good weather. Basically, any day is a good day when nothing goes wrong and you're making money. That's a good day. What was it? I can't remember the date, but it was November, I'd say 16th, 2019 is when we caught fire that day, when I had a engine room fire. Don't really know what caused it, but that was the worst day by far. But like we talked about in the thing you did right after the fire with everybody coming out to help bring the gear home, Eric Lorenzen, Chad Mahoney, Eric Moschino, all those guys. I mean, at a drop of a hat, no questions asked. They were asking for my numbers for the trawls to help me bring my gear home. And Chad towed me to the boat ramp that day so I could get hauled out. And, Josh Goodwin, all those guys were, right there to help, to have a community like that, at a drop of a dime, whatever you need to come help you. The best stuff that I always thought was Indian traps, to have a good gear string, good rope, good buoys, good traps. Keeping up on the gear is probably the biggest thing. A lot of guys will tell you any guy could go out and catch a lobster, but it's the maintenance of everything is what really makes or breaks you. With the off season and lobstering, I couldn't make the winters work for me fishing. So I always pulled my boat out January, mid-January, and then I'd start again in March. The biggest thing with the off season is to stay busy. But working with Nick Truby and those guys has been great, learning carpentry and stuff like that. When I'm done at 3 o'clock and I get home at 3:30, I'm up here working on the boat, splicing rope, gonna start going through traps now that all the snow's melted. So you never just put it down and that's it. It's always like, okay, now what's next? Now what can I do next? Now, You know, what can I do to make it a little bit better, a little more functioning and stuff like that. So the name Dire Wolf is not a reference to Game of Thrones, because a lot of people ask me that. It's a Grateful Dead song, and the reason why I picked Dire Wolf for the name of the boat was my friend Gregory Fleck, who passed away. That was one of our favorite songs together, was Dire Wolf. And he was still alive when I named the boat, so I don't know if it was like a thing to name it for him, but it suited the boat, I felt like. You know, there's days, and then as corny as it sounds, when you ride out on the boat and it's flat calm and you have the most amazing sunrise you'll ever see, it can hit you a certain way. You know, I'm very thankful of, being able to do what we get to do, with all the hard work. I mean, not a lot, there's people in the world that haven't even seen the ocean before, and that's where we go to work every day, so it kind of hits you, in a good way. Growing up in Hull, the high school's right on the water. You're watching the boats go in and out every day, so it was kind of, it was a calling at a very young age that I knew I was always going to be around the water doing something. So, but lobstering was the first thing that I came across that was probably the easiest for me to get into at that time. Hull was a fishing village basically before it was even established. But with what's going on now with the community and everything, it turns a lot of people's heads. Like, I have a lot of people walking up and down here in the summer or in the spring, people that don't live here, and they see a lobster boat in a yard jammed with traps, people come walking up and they're asking me questions about it, They think it's almost like a taboo way of lifestyle now, or a taboo way to earn a living. Like, why would you want to do that and work so hard? And it's like, well, what else am I going to do? It's like, I don't know what else to do. With the carpentry, it's nice, and, you learn different things, but it's not, I couldn't do that day in and day out. It's just not me, I guess you could say. But, I just always loved getting up early and putting a hard day's work in, and some people don't really appreciate that anymore, or get it, I should say. Everybody wants the 9 to 5, the cozy benefits and the insurances, and I've never had that, so I don't know what that kind of life is like. Finding crew is probably the hardest part of the job, I'd say. To find a good deckhand that's going to show up every day and do the job. But I've been very fortunate. I had a little rough go of it last year, but then I found a guy and it worked out pretty well. But there was about a month and a half I didn't have anybody. I was setting gear alone, going out, hauling the gear back alone, and it's not very easy to find help. A lot of people don't want to wake up. A lot of people don't want to do the job. You try to pay them as fair as you can, but a lot of people think they're worth top dollar, and they don't know how to tie a glowfish. It's like, how am I gonna pay a fair share if I got to show you everything and you can't remember it. But yeah, to go back to, you asked me earlier about lobster fishing and all the stuff. The hardest thing, I think, is to find a good crew. Well, with the Dire Wolf, I think you said to me once that I'm always the one down there with friends on the boat having fun. When my son wants to go out, or my friends want to go for a boat ride, or we go out to the illumination and stuff like that, I try to do that more. I think I got off topic with that question a little bit.